Welcome back to our Cyber Defense Roundtable, sponsored by Hexis Cyber Solutions, our panelist Todd Weller with Hexis and journalist Bill Jackson. And we've been talking about the threats and how to overcome these threats and what to do if you do get hacked or if you do experience a breach, but also working together to keep this from happening, the collaboration and the integration. And we were having a really great conversation off air about that, and I want to continue that here, about how folks really have to work together, even people who might be in competition with each other, and vendors. Bill, you were talking about making the point that vendors are learning how they have to work and play together in the same sandbox.
Yeah, you are seeing historically vendors are very competitive. They start with one product and they have multiple and they want to dominate the world and they don't want to work well with others. But what you are seeing in the market is security organizations are looking at their security vendors and saying, I need more integrated capabilities from you, but you also need to play well with others. And so that message is coming loud and clear. You're actually seeing some of the bigger security players, Intel, McAfee, is working with their threat intelligence exchange and kind of a messaging a way to tie all their products together, but also to tie their products with third-party products. Cisco has similar things going. At Hexis, it's very important for us. So we partner with companies like Palo Alto and Ingest FireEye and Splunk, but integration's becoming more important.
What sort of mindset had to change for that to happen? I mean, was there a time when you first got into this business where you thought, yeah, we would never do that, and now the situation is such that not only do you need to do it just for safety's sake and to have the best products out there, but everybody benefits. I mean, ultimately, it is for the greater good. So how long did it take to kind of make that ground shift to make it happen?
Well, I still think it's evolving. What's really happened, if you look at the large security organizations, they still operate with lots of products. So I talked to a security executive from a large West Coast energy company who said they have 150 different security products. That's a lot, right? So you're seeing a greater focus by the security buyers who they hold the ultimate stick over the vendors, right? Because they are the customer. Sure. They're saying, you know what? My solutions need to talk better. They're also looking at their defenses more from an architecture perspective. So we're seeing a lot of those organizations hire chief security architects and saying, I need to build a defense architecture that's agile and flexible because, as we talked earlier, technologies are going to change rapidly. So I need an architecture that can be stable where I can plug and play. And so that's driven vendor behavior, but ultimately it's the buyers. And another related thing around this is you're seeing more standards work, STIX, TAXI, which enables the exchange of threat information between different security controls from different vendors. But no one company rules the security world. Organizations have multiple products. They're demanding that they integrate, talk to one another, share threat intelligence.
I think the huge market for security products also plays into this. Nobody plays in every niche of the security field. So there's no reason for one company not to be able to share information with another or the devices to share information with each other if you're not competing in exactly the same niche. And there are so many point products out there. There are so many different things that need to be done that you can share and collaborate without giving anything away in your own position. And there are a lot of times when expanding a market by being able to cooperate and collaborate and exchange information makes your own products more valuable. You're not giving anything away to the competitor necessarily. What you're doing is increasing the value of your own products and making them much more useful to your customers.
You'd also be sharing customers, yeah?
Yeah, in a lot of cases you would be, because most customers have, as Todd pointed out,
100 some odd security measures.
It may not be all 100 different vendors, but everyone has multiple vendors because there's no one company you can go to get everything you need and should have.
Will that same philosophy work not just among vendors and in the private sector, but in the public sector too, where the vendors and the federal government work together, collaboration that way, private sector and public sector?
Well, I think from where we see that topic most prevalent is with threat intelligence sharing with the recent, CISA legislation. I think it's going to be a slow go. I mean, there definitely needs to be more sharing of information between the government and the private sector, but because of various events, NSA type stuff, there's a lot of distrust between the government and the private sector. But collaboration needs to happen. I just think it's something that's going to take time from a government, private sector information sharing perspective. Ironically,
the government has been a driver in collaboration within the private sector due to their requirements. With standards, Todd mentioned several standards. Something the government is driving is the security content automation protocols, SCAP. And if you buy a security product in the government, it's got to be compliant with these protocols that allow different vendors' products to work together. And so if you're going to sell into the government, and the government is the biggest single market out there, companies have to be compliant with this, and that means they're being forced to collaborate. And I think they're seeing an advantage in this. There's another related angle to this, which is, the government is very sophisticated, right, as far as their cyber capabilities, both offensive capabilities and defensive capabilities.
Which would fly in the face of what happened with OPM.
I didn't say, well, let me take that back.
Okay.
Certain government agencies are very sophisticated,
I'm with you.
Right? Those are mostly in the intelligence community,
sure.
Right? So what we're seeing there is them looking to educate the public, drive change. So the NSA has what they call their active cyber defense architecture, and it's around, it's called nicknamed Shortstop, and it is an integrated architecture of best-of-breed security solutions. So it's got Hexis Hawkeye G as the endpoint detection and response component. It has Palo Alto Networks as the firewall, next-generation firewall. Has FireEye for their network sandbox capabilities, and it has Splunk as kind of the command and control center. So, at Cyber Maryland a few weeks ago, a DoD representative at the keynote specifically mentioned, we're trying to help the private sector by sharing things like the reference architecture. And they're also within the government, NSA is trying to get the civilian agencies to say, okay, here's something you can do to better improve your security. So I thought that was interesting. And it's interesting that although NSA may be driving this, and those letters make the hair on the back of a lot of people's necks stand up when they hear it.
NSA.
Yes,
yeah.
Nobody likes that. But what they're doing is putting together an architecture based on commercial products. There are no NSA products in there. They didn't do the coding, and they aren't holding the information, and they aren't controlling any of this. They're saying, we came up with this way you can use off-the-shelf commercial technology that's out there right now. You can put it together in a way that makes you more secure. And I think that's very important that they're looking at off-the-shelf technology, and we're not looking at government products to secure most of the government infrastructure. And they're integrating it. So these solutions from different vendors work together. So in the case of the Shortstop implementation, Splunk is the command and control. Hawkeye G, we have our own user interface, but everything's controlled through the Splunk interface. And so if the system detects a threat, through Splunk, you can press a button and have an automated action take place by Hawkeye G. So that integration, I think, is really important in the fact that the government's driving that kind of reference architecture with commercial products, I think is a very good thing.
About Shortstop, who would use Shortstop? Who would benefit from using that particular technique?
I think any company would. I think from a NSA perspective, they're primarily focused on, how can we help the rest of the other government agencies deploy next generation technologies for cyber defense. But, we're seeing outside of the government interest in deploying and integrating those capabilities. I mean, we have several customer examples today that, they're using Hawkeye G, they're pulling in Palo Alto, they're pulling in FireEye, and then they're using Splunk as well. So it's being driven by the NSA, but it's broadly applicable to other agencies and commercial companies.
Is this just the beginning of how this is going to have to work? The integration and the collaboration, is this a good example of almost the beginning of how they're going to eventually overcome these types of cyber threats, or at least get out in front of them?
I wouldn't go so far as to predict that we'll eventually overcome or even get in front of cyber
I'm looking
threats.
for happy.
You know, if you're optimistic, if you're a glass half full kind of person, then yes. But any progress we make at all, I think, is increasingly going to be in the area of being able to use best of breed technology. Everyone does what they do best, and then you put them together into something that's workable, that gives you the most complete coverage that you can get, because nobody does everything, and some people do different things better than others.
And I think in order to get better defense, one thing we haven't hit on yet is that when we say prevention, detection, and response has been the least area of investment. So less than 10% of security investment has gone to being able to respond to cyber threats.
Why is that?
They haven't been as prevalent as we've seen over the last few years, right? So now what happens is you get a high-profile attack, you call up an incident response firm to come in and tell you how bad it is and to help you remediate and fix it. But now, again, these attacks are not one-off events, they're continuous. So you as an organization need to monitor your environment, and you need to be able to respond. Now, the challenge is attacks are coming fast. Finding skilled security staff is hard. So that drives a need to invest in automated response technology. So security automation is actually an interesting emerging area as far as cyber defense.
Because constant vigilance is exhausting. It's exhausting. And you have to have that automation.
Security operations, physical security operations, have found that having a human being watching a bank of video monitors is pretty much a waste of time, because after about 10 minutes, he doesn't see anything. And you may think that, well, with all these video cameras we have up here, we've done a great job of securing this area, but it doesn't make a bit of difference if the guy at the desk is all glassy-eyed and missing everything that's going on. And it's the same way with cybersecurity. Just because you have a ton of good data coming in from all sorts of sensors out there, human beings can't handle this. You need to automate what can be automated so that human beings are left to do what they do best and what they can do.
Are human beings doing the attacking as well, or are they using bots and other sorts of?
Well, attackers leverage automation to attack. So
we got to leverage automation to protect.
To respond, protect, absolutely. It's interesting. I just wrote a snippet for, I think it was CIO magazine, about different trends, or what you would ask for Santa Claus, right, for Cyber Christmas. And I said, you know what, security automation. Remember when they said airplanes would never be flown by a computer? Well, now they are, right? People said your IT infrastructure would never be automated. Well, now with cloud and virtualization, it's completely automated. So security needs to be the same way, because security organizations are overwhelmed. Even if you're a large enterprise and you have a lot of resources, your staff is overwhelmed. So I think you're going to see automation deployed in security like we've seen in other areas.
And
I see another issue of trust there too.
Organizations are becoming more comfortable with the idea of automation. There was the intrusion detection systems that originally came out, and they would tell you when something's going on. And then there was an intrusion prevention system, which would actually stop something bad that was happening. And a lot of organizations were hesitant to move from detection to prevention and turn the controls over to a machine.
Why is that?
Because they didn't want the machine doing something wrong and shutting down a system that people were depending on. It was a matter of trust, and it was a gradual phase. People didn't have to go completely automated. They were able to get alerts and let the machine suggest something, and then in some cases let the machine actually automate the response. And as they become more comfortable with this, they realize it's not that big a deal. There is an awful lot that can be automated. We don't have to have our finger on every single thing that happens.
Yeah, we talk about it at Hexis as, use automation to be a force multiplier, because you do have scarce staff. And it's not about taking the human, out of the loop, right? It's putting the human on the loop. So being able to respond faster.
Okay, so before we wrap up this segment, I just need to know, where are we now when it comes to that sort of mindset and the ability to have that automation in place? Are you seeing more people come on board with it? Is it more accepted now, or is it, like you said, a slow evolution to get there?
I think the change is speeding up.
Okay.
There's some recognition that automation does work and it is necessary, but I think it's still a transition period. I don't think people have completely bought into everything that automation can do for them.
Yeah, we talk about crawl, walk, run with our Hawkeye G solution. So customers use it, they'll use a little bit of automation and increase it over time. So I think given that and the skepticism that Bill talked about, it's important to give the customer the ability to use automation at their pace. And in some cases, there's certain, the example I use is like a Wall Street firm, which I used to work, so I use a lot. But if you're the equity research analyst and it's his laptop and you have a high confidence in a threat, take automated action, because if you made a mistake, they might yell at you for a little while. But the trading server that's driving your revenue, I don't want you touching that. So I think it's crawl, walk, run, and giving companies the ability to deploy it at their own pace and comfort.
So we're starting to walk overall?
Yeah, I think we're starting to walk. If you look at popular security industry magazines or trade rags, you're seeing security automation talked about more. You're seeing it talked about by the industry analysts. And the previous topic we talked about, integration and orchestrating those environments, are talked about more. And if you kind of piece it all together, integration is required in order for your environment to be orchestrated, share things among one another, and ultimately that's required for automation. So,
and I think as the frontline people in an organization realize that it can make their lives better, that you don't have to spend your entire day putting out fires if you've got a machine, a system that can do that for you, and you're able to spend the time at work focusing on things that are going to be much more productive. And I think as the individuals realize that quality of life improves with this, it's going to take off even more.
We want to talk about next what's going to happen in the next few years, next 10 years maybe. We want to get that information, and maybe you guys can pull out your crystal balls and give us an idea of what happens next. We will be right back with more from our Cyber Defense Roundtable. Stay with us.